My God, I am yours for time and eternity. Lord, I am yours forever. It is you must teach me to trust in your providence, loving Lord.
My name is Sister Bernie Roche, and I'm a member of the Institute of Our Lady of Mercy. I was very honoured to be invited to share this short reflection on Catherine's Suscipe prayer, which I hope will aid you in your own prayer and reflection as Mercy associates. You can use the presentation in whatever way you find helpful, listening right through, or pausing using some of the suggested questions as prompts to pondering either personally or in your group. So the Suscipe is perhaps the most familiar of the prayers that we know Catherine herself wrote, not least because no mercy gathering is complete without singing it. In this reflection space, we have an opportunity to allow Catherine to speak to us as we gently explore her words and how they touch us today, using each section of the prayer to go a little deeper into the mystery of God's love. So a little bit of background might help. So we find the text for the Suscipe in the life of Catherine that was composed by one of the early sisters, Sister Vincent Harnett. Vincent Hartnett entered Baggot Street in 1837, so she met Catherine, she was around, and she was instructed by Catherine as a novice. She was part of the foundation to Limerick in 1838, and she became assistant to one of Catherine's closest friends, Sister Elizabeth Moore. So the life of Catherine McAuley she composed is often referred to as the Limerick manuscript. It undoubtedly contains some of the memories and stories from Sister Elizabeth herself. Vincent places this prayer, the Suscipe prayer, in the part of her manuscript describing Catherine's death with these very poignant words, actually. The following little prayer, composed by herself, expresses most truly her sentiments. So it's very precious. We've got a real glimpse of something that's at the heart of Catherine in this prayer. So as I recite the prayer using the words that Vincent has in her manuscript, just maybe hold that in your heart, Vincent's description, that this truly expresses Catherine's sentiments. My God, I am thine for all eternity. Teach me to cast my whole self into the arms of thy providence with the most lively, unlimited confidence in thy compassionate, tender pity. Grant, O most merciful Redeemer, that whatever thou dost ordain or permit may be acceptable to me. Take from my heart all painful anxiety. Suffer nothing to afflict me but sin, nothing to delight me but the hope of coming to the possession of thee, my God, in thy own everlasting kingdom. So as said before, as a personal prayer composed by Catherine, this gives us a precious glimpse into her heart. She was known rarely to speak about her inner life, except perhaps to her closest friends like Elizabeth Moore and Frances Ward. But through her writings, we get abundant evidence that her image of God was that of one who is utterly trustworthy, compassionate, and loving. Sort of going through Catherine's writings, she uses a lot of what would be termed like heart words. So words such as cordial and ardent and compassionate and loving and tender. It's very, very noticeable in her writings. The Suscipe is a prime example showing how Catherine related to God. It's a confident, hopeful and positive address to God. So we're in the presence of someone here who is sure of her ground with God and who, despite all that life has thrown at her, has developed a very deep mystical relationship with the Lord. She's been through the darkness and come through, and nothing can shake her confidence. And she's content to give every part of her life to God in love. And this must have been the result of many hours of contemplation. And as we know, this total self-giving of ours did not come easy to her. And there are hints in the Suscipe of the blocks to being in this open and trusting relationship with God, with painful anxiety being highlighted as one of them. The Suscipe prayer belongs to a very old tradition of self-offering prayers in the church, and is quite similar to the one used by St. Ignatius Loyola in the spiritual directions that Take, Lord, Receive, and that of a later Saint Charles de Foucauld. We can use Catherine's prayer as a way of beginning to reflect on the total gift of our lives to God as expressed in our baptism. We respond to the God who has loved us first and who has called us first. So I'm just going to take each little section of the Suscipe, and I'm going to start with, "My God, I am thine for all eternity." So in this very bold and confident statement, Catherine invites us to reflect on how it is to belong completely to God. It's a response in love to the God who has first loved, chose, and called me. So a couple of reflection questions. Where is my heart at the moment? And what helps me to respond to God and deepen my search for God? So we come to the next bit of Catherine's prayer, and this is, "Teach me to cast my whole self entirely into the arms of thy providence, with the most lively, unlimited confidence in thy compassionate, tender pity." It's a really lovely image of throwing yourselves into the arms of a loving God. It's a wonderful image Catherine has here. So this prayer, this part of the prayer, encourages us to away from the false thinking of self-sufficiency, of not acknowledging our need for God. And it acknowledges that we need God to teach us how to risk to trust this divine self-giving grace with complete certainty. All that we have is a gift from God. We also need the support and solidarity of other people to help us live this out. Catherine here reminds us that our security and our worth is in God, not in what I do or what I have or any status. I come to God with empty hands, but only so God can fill me. I'm then challenged to share without reserve all I have received as a gift. I have to risk that self-surrender. So Catherine's image of God, as we've just touched on, is animating and secure. She's grounded in God. She's aware of her own need and poverty. And in that groundedness, she can do anything for the kingdom. She can accept difficult and insecure situations in the belief that in the darkness and the confusion, God is there and utterly trustworthy. And we know that this trust in God was such that Bishop Murphy of Cork, is more in exasperation than compliment, termed her the Sister of Divine Providence, because she dared to start the Cork Foundation with women who were unable to provide the financial security for the new community of coming with a full dowry. So you can understand the bishop feeling a bit exasperated and worrying about where the pounds, pennies and shillings would come from. And Catherine saying, let's do it, let's found, God is with us. So you can understand this wonderful trust in divine providence, quite awe-inspiring and maybe a little bit, ooh, can I do that? So maybe a question for us now is, how do I see myself living out this trust in divine providence? So we move on to the next little bit of the prayer, where Catherine prays, grant, O most merciful Redeemer, that whatever thou dost ordain or permit may always be acceptable to me. So here Catherine places a merciful God at the centre of this petition, a sure and present reality. She presents us with the paradox of surrendering to the will of this merciful God and finding in this surrender the freedom to respond to what God asks for me. She acknowledges in her plea that this isn't something that she can do by herself, with her own resources. She needs God to help her to see God's purpose in all the circumstances of her life. In baptism, I am committing myself to a lifelong listening to God, to follow Jesus in his complete self-surrender to the Father in love, even though this will undoubtedly lead to the cross. His ways become my ways. God's desire will always be for our sanctification, that loving union with the one who loves us infinitely. Maybe we can ask ourselves, how do I recognize God in my life? Where do I catch God's heartbeat? And how do I listen to God? Through scripture, through church teaching, through the people around us, in me and my family, through the signs of the times, and through the scripture of my own life, the events in my own life. How do I listen to God? And the final part of Catherine's prayer: take from my heart all painful anxiety. Suffer nothing to sadden me but sin, nothing to delight me but the hope of the coming to the possession of thee, my God, in thy own everlasting kingdom. So the last part of this prayer gives us a glimpse of what Catherine felt prevented her from surrendering her life to God, and it also brings the Suscipe to a completion. Catherine desires the possession of the God she has claimed she belongs to forever. So in her life of Catherine, Claire Augustine Moore, who's the sister of Claire Moore, she was the sister who did all the beautiful illustrations, she describes Catherine as being kept in a state of perpetual agitation by the superiors in George's Hill Convent, the Presentation Convent, during her novitiate, by hinting that they would profess Mary Ann Doyle and Elizabeth Harley, but not her. So you can imagine the anxiety of that. She also describes Catherine getting into little frets on occasion when being overwhelmed with difficulties. So it's quite comforting actually to know that Catherine has, suffered from anxiety at times, and she knew how painful, ruminating, anxious thoughts can block a sense of God's presence and become all consuming. And we probably have all experienced that from time to time. She also knew how an over preoccupation with ourselves can lead to unnecessary sadness. We have a wonderful illustration of this in one of her letters to Frances Ward, where she's describing, she's at Booterstown Convent, one of the branch houses at Baggot Street, and she's taken Sister Teresa Carlton for a change of air. So she describes, I hurried to get poor Teresa here into a change of air. She is already evidently better, but is fretting so much at being taken from her employment that I fear the good effect will be lost. She has given me much uneasiness by the gloomy, peevish manner she behaves every day since she came here. Can always imagine this sister with her lip out, sulking. And Catherine's recognising that all the good of being away, a little break from her duties, is totally being lost because the sister's kind of preoccupied with herself. Catherine encourages us in her Suscipe to make sure that each action, as she writes in another place, is all full of God, breathes of God, shines with God, and is fragrant with God. And maybe as we finish our reflection time, we can ask ourselves a couple of questions. What blocks can I identify in me which prevent me from trusting in God's steadfast love, even in God's seeming absence, which is often the mark of a mature Christian, that there's maybe not a great sense of God. So what sort of things block me from trusting that God is there? And maybe to think about, what would your Suscipe look like? And maybe just take time to compose your own Suscipe and see what that looks like. What would you bring in? What would you want to say to God? What would you want to ask of God? And maybe ask Catherine to walk with you as you compose your own Suscipe.
My God, I am yours, time and eternity. Lord, I am yours forever. It is you must teach me to trust in your providence, loving Lord. You are God of love and tenderness. I place my trust in you, and I ask that you grant me acceptance of your will, loving Lord. My God, I am yours for time and eternity. Lord, I am yours forever. It is you must teach me to trust in your providence, loving Lord. Take from my heart all painful anxiety. Let nothing sadden me but a sin, and then let my delight be hoping to see your face, loving Lord. My God, I am yours for time and eternity. Lord, I am yours forever. It is you must teach me to trust in your